6 hours remained on the countdown to Black Tide Night. Obsidian Village did not fall into panic. Or rather, Lin Yao did not allow anyone to panic. He gathered every core member beneath the Obsidian Banner and assigned tasks quickly. Uncle Joe was responsible for opening the temporary roster. Guan was responsible for the contamination isolation shed and the allocation of talisman water. Bai Ji was responsible for notifying collaborators on the perimeter. Sheng was responsible for scouting the condition of each player gathering point. Gao Mu led the assault squad to guard the outer perimeter of Obsidian Village. Chen Hao took several players who were willing to help and maintained order in the trading area. Xingya and Xiaolan were assigned to the medicine shed and forbidden from approaching the contaminated. Lu Chang sealed off the public ledger granary and the area around the Lord's stone steel. No outside player was allowed to approach. The rules of Black Tide Night were very clear. It would search for 3 kinds of openings: the nameless, the hoarders, disordered gathering points. The nameless were those whose identities were unstable, whose minds had collapsed, and who forgot who they were after being contaminated. The hoarders were those who knew Black Tide materials were highly dangerous and still kept contaminated objects. Disordered gathering points were crowds without rules, without rosters, and without anyone in charge. To the Black Tide, all 3 were entrances. It did not need to break through a wall. It only needed to find a crack inside a human heart. Lin Yao stood beneath the Obsidian Banner with the Purification Register in his hand. Now, this register was no longer merely a thin booklet. Clearer dark red patterns had appeared on its cover. Every time a contaminated person was registered, it warmed slightly. Black Tide Night Temporary Roster. Purpose: stabilize the identity recognition of those at risk of contamination during Black Tide Night. Range: Obsidian Village and its surrounding cooperative areas. Warning: roster capacity is limited. Please prioritize high-risk individuals. Limited capacity. That meant Lin Yao could not save everyone without limit. This was the cruelest part. When a crisis arrived, wanting to save people did not mean they could be saved. Resources were limited. The roster was limited. Talisman water was limited. Manpower was limited as well. Uncle Joe looked at the roster capacity, his face turning pale. My lord, how many people can it register at most? Lin Yao checked the panel. Current stable registration slots available, 50. 50. For Obsidian Village, that was not a small number. But compared with the total number of players around the outer Blackstone Wasteland, it was far from enough. Lin Yao made his decision at once. Priority order. First, those already contaminated but willing to cooperate. Second, those who privately kept contaminated objects but report them voluntarily. Third, high-risk individuals among peripheral collaborators and within Obsidian Village's trading area. Fourth, other unaffiliated individuals. Zhao Tai frowned. What if someone refuses to accept it? Lin Yao said, let him leave. What if he makes trouble? Throw him out. What if he forces his way in with contaminated objects? Lin Yao looked toward Gao Mu. Gao Mu answered for him. Cut him down. Uncle Joe's hand trembled. But he did not object. This was not an ordinary time. On Black Tide Night, a single out-of-control contaminated person could drag the entire village under. Mercy without boundaries would turn into disaster. Bai Shi quickly sent the message to the group of peripheral collaborators. Black Tide Night Rules. 1. Anyone privately keeping Black Tide items must report them immediately. 2. Those who report voluntarily may enter the roster for processing. 3. Anyone who conceals such items and is discovered will permanently lose all trading and cooperation privileges with Obsidian Village. 4. Contaminated individuals may not log off. 5. During Black Tide Night, do not stay alone, do not answer unfamiliar roll calls, and do not believe voices coming from shadows in corners. The last rule was added by Shen, because he understood that feeling better than anyone. The black tide did not only make people hungry. It also called people's names. But the names it called were often not correct names. It called nicknames, humiliating labels, and malicious names that others had used against you. It made you believe that you were not a human being, but some kind of thing that could be swallowed. Shen stood outside the trading area and repeated the same words to the contaminated again and again. If you hear it call you a monster, don't answer. If it calls you a rat, don't answer. If it calls you trash, don't answer. Remember the name you acknowledge for yourself. Those words carried more power than any official announcement. Because Shen had once almost had his name swallowed by the black tide. Soon, the first group of hoarders arrived. 3 unaffiliated players. They brought 2 black tide bone fragments, a black claw tip, and an iron shard stained with black mist. All 3 looked terrible. Clearly, they had not originally wanted to hand them over. But the Black Tide Night announcement had frightened them. Lin Yao did not scold them. He only had them register. Voluntary report. Handle it according to the rules. The 3 of them breathed a sigh of relief. One of them could not help asking, after it's handled, can we still trade here? Lin Yao looked at him. For a first voluntary report, yes. If there is a second time, no. The man nodded again and again. The black tide contaminated objects were sent into the isolation shed. Guan and Baiji were becoming increasingly practiced in handling them. Low-activity contaminated objects could already be deactivated steadily. But medium-activity objects were still troublesome. Every treatment consumed steel ash and talisman water. Uncle Joe kept recording the accounts. Black Tide Night consumption account. Wound cleansing talisman water, being consumed. Starving dead steel ash, small amount consumed. Clear heart grass, being consumed. Blackstone moss powder, being consumed. Purification Register slots, 13/50ths used. Lin Yao watched the numbers rise and knew very clearly in his heart. This was only the beginning. When 4 hours remained on the countdown, Sheng reported back. Blackstone Camp is in chaos. Lin Yao's gaze darkened. What kind of chaos? Some people refuse to hand over black tide materials. Others are saying Obsidian Village wants to monopolize the profits from the black tide. Baiji's face went pale with anger. At a time like this, people are still talking about profit? Chen Hao sneered. The more dangerous something is, the more some people think it can sell for big money. Lin Yao looked toward Gao Mu. Send people? Gao Mu shook his head. Obsidian Village cannot be left empty. That was the problem. The main target of Black Tide Night might not be Obsidian Village, but Obsidian Village was now the most famous place here. It might also be watched by the contaminated. They could not send out all their main strength. Lin Yao thought for a moment and contacted Chu He. Private hoarders are inciting people in Blackstone Camp. Can Dragon Court handle outer order? Chu He replied quickly. Yes, but Dragon Court cannot forcibly confiscate contaminated objects on Obsidian Village's behalf. Lin Yao replied. No confiscation needed. Seal off the perimeter. Prevent contaminated people from logging off or scattering. Chu He understood. Then he contacted Shen Xianzhou. There may be a black tide material buyer inciting people in Blackstone Camp. Shen Shenzhou took more than 10 seconds before replying. I will deal with Shen family personnel involved. Lin Yao looked at that line and knew there truly were people inside the Shen family involved in this. But now was not the time to assign blame. They had to survive Black Tide Night first. When 3 hours remained on the countdown, Su Qingli brought a temporary rune. A name-stabilizing talisman from ancient Su family texts. Lin Yao took it. Name-stabilizing talisman. Purpose: assist in stabilizing a contaminated person's self-recognition. Restriction: must be used together with the roster. The price? Su Qingli said, after Black Tide Night, I want to copy the non-core format of the Purification Register. Lin Yao looked at her. It will not include the Obsidian Banner command light, the Steel Ash ratio, or the core judgment language. Acceptable. Su Qingli nodded. Deal. The name-stabilizing talismans were put to use immediately. Efficiency improved noticeably. The pressure on the Purification Register eased slightly. This was the value of the Su family. They might not necessarily be able to fight head-on, but they could always produce key things from ancient texts. When 1 hour remained on the countdown, a long line had already formed outside the trading area. There were contaminated people. There were hoarders. There were players who were simply panicking. Lin Yao had no choice but to restrict roster usage once again. Those who have not come into contact with contaminated objects will not enter the register. They will only receive name-stabilizing guidance. Someone was dissatisfied. We're scared too. Lin Yao looked at him. Fear is not contamination. The person had no answer. Black Tide Night could not allocate resources by fear. It had to allocate them by risk level. Uncle Joe stood beside him and watched Lin Yao refuse low-risk people again and again, his feelings complicated. In the past, he had thought a lord needed to be merciful. Now he understood that a lord also needed to know how to refuse. Otherwise, the ones who truly needed to be saved would die in line instead. 10 minutes remained on the countdown. The sky outside Obsidian Village began to darken. It was not nightfall. It was black tide mist. Across the distant Blackstone Wasteland, faint fires lit up one player gathering point after another. Beyond those fires, shadows were moving. A system prompt sounded. Regional event, Black Tide Night is about to begin. All players, please confirm your contamination status. Do not privately keep black tide items. Do not answer unknown calls. Do not force a logout while contaminated. The countdown reached 0. The Blackstone Wasteland instantly fell silent. Then, countless whispers rose from the darkness. Who are you? What is your name? No one remembers you. You have no name. You are only hungry. The Obsidian Banner suddenly unfurled. Lin Yao stood before the banner and opened the Purification Register. Obsidian Village. Open the roster. Guard Black Tide Night. When Black Tide Night truly descended, the perimeter of Obsidian Village seemed to be wrapped in a layer of black tidewater. It was not a physical current. It was a night mist formed from countless low-level contamination auras gathering together. There were voices in the mist. Each person heard something different. Some heard their relatives calling them. Some heard their enemies insulting them. Some heard dead teammates asking why they had not been saved. Some heard the names they feared most in their hearts. Trash. Monster. Deserter. Useless person. Unwanted thing. These voices were not simple threats. They were stripping away names. As long as you answered, as long as you acknowledged that you were the label called out by the black tide, your name would loosen. Once a name loosened, the black tide would have a crack to enter. Inside Obsidian Village's trading area, a player suddenly clutched his head. Don't call me that. I'm not. Ajan rushed over immediately. What is your name? The player said in agony, I don't know. Ajan slapped a hand onto his shoulder. Look at the roster. Bai Ji opened the temporary roster. His name is He-jun. He registered just now. Ajan seized the player's collar. Your name is He-jun. Not that thing in its mouth. He-jun's gaze slowly recovered. My name is He-jun. Black mist dispersed from beside his ear. Scenes like this happened again and again in different parts of the trading area. The pressure on the Purification Register increased rapidly. Temporary roster usage, 31 of 50. Contamination pressure rising. Obsidian Banner command light being consumed. Inside the contamination isolation shed, Guan was so busy that he almost never stopped moving. Bowl after bowl of talisman water was used up. Blackstone moss powder was consumed rapidly. Qingya and Xiaolan separated medicine powder in the safe zone, their hands trembling, but they made no mistakes. Uncle Zhou recorded accounts while recording names. For the first time, he discovered that writing names could be like fighting a battle. If he was a little slower, someone might be dragged away by the black tide. On the outer defense line, Zhao Tai led the assault squad in resisting low-level black tide shadows. These shadows were not complete black tide remnants. They were more like claws and fangs condensed from the night mist of black tide night. They were not strong. But there were many of them, and they always tried to bypass combat units and rush toward the mentally unstable players inside the trading area. Gaomu stood beside the Obsidian Banner and continued issuing orders. Zhao Tai, left side. Li Feng, fill the gap. Lu Shi, don't chase. Wang Shan, protect the roster shed. The assault squad was much more mature this time than before. They knew their mission was not to kill every shadow. It was to protect the roster, the isolation shed, and the trading area's defense line. Chen Hao took several willing players and patched holes on the second line. His combat movements after reality synchronization were becoming steadier and steadier. Although in the game he was only a border soldier, after multiple rounds of training in the assault camp, he already had true battlefield reactions. When a shadow pounced toward Bai Ji's back, Chen Hao directly smashed it apart with a staff. Bai Ji looked back. Thanks. Chen Hao gasped. Put it in the account. Bai Ji froze for a second and almost laughed. Even on Black Tide night, the people of Obsidian Village still could not get away from bookkeeping. But it was precisely this order, this insistence that everything had a record, that prevented chaos from swallowing them. Outside the village, a request for help came from Blackstone Camp. Shu He sent a message. The outer perimeter of Blackstone Camp is stabilized, but there is a high-risk contaminated individual out of control inside. Lin Yao replied. Can he be brought to Obsidian Village? Shu He, we can't move him. He refuses to leave. There is a black tide source beside him. Lin Yao's face darkened as he looked at the message. He could not leave Obsidian Village. The Obsidian Banner and Purification Register needed him to preside over them. If he left, Obsidian Village's defense line might collapse. But if a high-risk contamination source erupted in Blackstone Camp, reality anchoring might occur from there. Lin Yao asked. Does the contaminated person have a name? Shu He replied. Unknown. The people around him only call him boss. Boss. Again, a title, not a name. Lin Yao immediately realized the problem. that person was likely one of the black tide material buyers. He bought contaminated objects in Blackstone Camp, and everyone only called him boss. No one knew his real name. Nameless, hoarder, disordered gathering point. All three conditions were met. The anchor point Black Tide Knight could most easily choose was him. Lin Yao took a deep breath and contacted Shen. The buyer in Blackstone Camp is called boss by others. Do you know who he is? For a long while, Shen did not reply. Just when Lin Yao thought he was going to play dead, the message arrived. One of He Jin's people. Lin Yao's eyes went cold. He Jin. The Shen family's external affairs manager. The man who had once come to Obsidian Village to test the military granary. Name. Shen replied. Zhao Qian. His real-life name is uncertain. His game name is Zhao Qian. A buyer from a Shen family external affairs branch. That was enough. If a game name could be acknowledged by the person himself, it could temporarily anchor him. Lin Yao immediately wrote the name into the remote temporary page of the Purification Register. Contamination risk individual, Zhao Qian. Identity, buyer from a Shen family external affairs branch. Contamination source, privately hoarded black tide materials. Status, suspected nameless transformation. The register shook violently. This was remote name registration, and the pressure was enormous. Lin Yao sent Chu He a message. Tell him his name is Zhao Qian. Tell everyone not to call him boss. Call his name. Chu He immediately replied. Understood. From Blackstone Camp, chaotic voice clips soon came through. Zhao Qian. Your name is Zhao Qian. Not boss. Zhao Qian, look at me. Lin Yao could feel the name on the Purification Register flickering between bright and dim. The black tide was stealing. Obsidian Village was pulling back. Shen sent another message. He Jin has lost contact. Lin Yao's heart sank further. This matter probably was not only Zhao Qian privately hoarding materials. Something might also have gone wrong on He Jin's side. But at this moment, he had no attention to spare for the Shen family's internal problems. The pressure of Black Tide Knight was growing heavier and heavier. Temporary roster usage, 44 of 50. Obsidian Banner command light consumption, medium-high. Contamination isolation shed pressure, high. Guan walked out of the isolation shed, his face pale. The roster is almost full. Lin Yao asked, how many high-risk people are left? Bai Ji counted quickly. 4 more around Obsidian Village's perimeter. At least Zhao Qian in Blackstone Camp. The other gathering points are unknown. There were not enough slots. Lin Yao had to make a choice. At that moment, Uncle Joe suddenly said, My lord, can we open a sub-register? Lin Yao looked at him. Uncle Joe held an ordinary booklet. The main register records high-risk individuals. The sub-register records low-risk individuals. The sub-register does not directly purify. It only stabilizes names. Lin Yao's eyes brightened. This was public account thinking. Main accounts and subsidiary accounts. A roster could also have a main register and a sub-register. He immediately checked the system. Establish purification sub-register? Effect, expands low-risk name stabilization capacity, but cannot directly suppress medium to high contamination. Establish it. Purification sub-register established. Low-risk name stabilization slots increased, 100. Main register pressure reduced. Uncle Joe almost could not stand steady. But a smile appeared on his face. It works. Lin Yao looked at him. This is a merit. Uncle Joe smiled and shook his head. As long as it can save people. After the Purification Sub-Register was established, low-risk individuals were quickly transferred out. Main register slots opened up. Lin Yao immediately stabilized Zhao Qian's name. From Blackstone Camp, Shui sent news. Zhao Qian is temporarily conscious, but the black tide source is still beside him. There are a large number of bone fragments in his box. Lin Yao asked. Can it be sealed? Shui, too many. It needs Obsidian Banner command light. Obsidian Banner command light could not be output at long range in large quantities. Unless. Lin Yao looked at the prompt for the weak reality projection. If, after the first synchronization node, the Purification Register could form a weak reality projection, could it also form a remote weak projection in-game through the sub-register? He tore a page from the Purification Sub-Register. On it, he wrote, Zhao Qian Contamination Source Temporary Sealing Page. Then he pressed it with Obsidian Banner command light. The paper turned pale gray, and dark red patterns appeared along its edges. Temporary sealing page. May be carried by one who accepts Obsidian Village temporary military orders. Used to suppress low to medium activity black tide contamination sources for a short time. Invalid after use. Lin Yao immediately handed it to Sheng. Deliver it to Blackstone Camp. Sheng did not waste a word. He turned and rushed into the black night. Zhao Tai said anxiously, My lord, there are many black tide shadows outside. Lin Yao said, That is why you cannot go. Zhao Tai froze. Gao Mu understood. The assault squad could not leave the defense line. Sheng was the most suitable person. Bai Ji immediately said, I'll go meet him. Lin Yao glanced at her. Only halfway. All right. Sheng carried the temporary sealing page and rushed toward Blackstone Camp. Within Black Tide Night, countless whispers tried to call him back. Thief. No one sees you. Running so fast, are you trying to escape? Sheng gritted his teeth and did not look back. In his heart, he repeated only one sentence. I am Sheng. Scout of Obsidian Village. I am delivering an order. On Black Tide Night, that was his name and his duty. Half a quarter of an hour later, Shui sent a message. The sealing page has arrived. Beginning to suppress contamination source. Lin Yao tightened his grip on the Purification Register. In the distance, from the direction of Blackstone Camp, a mass of black light erupted. Immediately afterward, a dark red command light pressed down. A system prompt appeared. Blackstone Camp medium contamination source temporarily sealed. Reality anchoring failed. A burst of cheers erupted inside the trading area. But Lin Yao did not relax. Because Black Tide Night was not over yet. And the real counterattack usually came at the end. Sure enough, when the final hour remained on the countdown, the black mist around Obsidian Village's perimeter began to contract. All the shadows no longer scattered to harass them, but converged in the same direction. The contamination isolation shed. The black tide had realized that Obsidian Village was the core blocking its reality anchoring. It wanted to tear away the Purification Register directly. Lin Yao raised his head. The Obsidian Banner snapped fiercely in the wind. He gave the order in a low voice. Everyone! Guard the register. During the final hour of Black Tide Night, Obsidian Village faced the true assault. Black mist gathered from every direction. Low-level black tide shadows no longer pounced in scattered attacks, but formed a tide. They had no fixed shape. Some were human-shaped. Some beast-shaped. Some bone-shaped. Some even imitated the faces of players. they had only one target: the Purification Register inside the contamination isolation shed. As long as the register was destroyed, all the contaminated people currently being name-stabilized would lose their anchors at once. The black tide could then complete reality anchoring through them. Lin Yao stood before the isolation shed. Behind him was the Purification Register. Before him was the command light of the Obsidian Banner. Zhao Tai led the assault squad and formed the first line. Li Feng, Wang Shan, and Lu Shi guarded the left and right. Gao Mu stood beneath the banner light, holding a rusted long blade. Chen Hao and the peripheral players held the second line. Bai Xi, Guan, and Uncle Zhou remained inside the shed. Xingya and Xiaolan had been sent back into the village, but they were still in the medicine shed preparing the last medicine powder. On this night, everyone had a position. When the first wave of black tide shadows slammed into the defense line, Zhao Tai was almost knocked back outright. Individually, they were not strong, but there were too many. Like waves striking a levee. Zhao Tai roared, "Hold!" Li Feng's shoulder injury had not healed, but he still gritted his teeth and used his spear to stop a shadow. Wang Shan smashed apart a black claw crawling toward the ground with his shield. Lu Shi was facing an attack of this scale for the first time. His face was deathly pale, and he kept muttering. "Eat military grain, guard military grain. Eat military grain, guard military grain." The sentence was so simple it was almost clumsy. But it kept him from retreating. Gao Mu looked at them and gave the order in a deep voice. "Not one step back. What you guard is not the shed. It is the names inside the shed." The black tide shadows began imitating voices. They called Li Feng with the voices of his dead relatives. They shook Wang Shan with the crying voice of his younger brother. They enraged Zhao Tai with the insults he had suffered during his exile. "Brute! All you know is how to get people killed. You can't hold this." Zhao Tai's eyes reddened, and he almost rushed out. Gao Mu shouted sharply, "Zhao Tai!" Zhao Tai abruptly came back to himself. "Here!" Gao Mu said coldly, "Report your post." Zhao Tai gritted his teeth. "Acting captain of Obsidian Village's assault squad. What are you guarding?" "The register." "Who are you guarding?" Zhao Tai looked back behind him. Those contaminated people, players, villagers, and peripheral collaborators were all watching them. He roared, "The people behind us!" The Obsidian Banner trembled violently. The morale of the assault squad steadied again. Lin Yao watched this scene and immediately understood. The strongest attack of Black Tide Night was not tearing flesh. It was tearing identity. That meant every person had to constantly confirm who they were, where they stood, and what they were guarding. He opened the temporary roster and loudly read the frontline names. Zhao Tai, Li Feng, Wang Shan, Lu Shi. Every time he read a name, a faint light pattern appeared on that person. Gao Mu, Chen Hao, Bai Xi, A Zhan, Uncle Zhou, Guan. Names were read one after another. The black tide whispers were pressed down by one layer. Asian stood among the contaminated and began to read names as well. He read the names of the contaminated. A Sun, Luo Min, Brother Blade, Little Gray, Zhou Lei, He Jun. You all have names. The eyes of the contaminated, which had been wavering, gradually stabilized. At this moment, they were no longer only people being saved. They were also helping guard the register. When Shen Shenzhou arrived with his people, this was the scene he saw. Obsidian Village's defense line was not grand. It was even crude. For new assault soldiers, 1 banner, 1 isolation shed, 1 register. But this defense line had forcibly blocked the strongest impact of Black Tide Night. Shen Shenzhou did not say much. He directly ordered. Shen guards, reinforce the right side. Lin Yao glanced at him. Enter the temporary roster. Shen Shenzhou froze for a moment, then nodded. Shen family squad, accepting temporary military orders under the Obsidian Banner. This time, there was not the slightest reluctance in his voice. The temporary roster lit up. The Shen family guards joined the right defense line. Immediately afterward, Shui led a Dragon Court squad in from the left. Dragon Court assisting defense. Su Qingli also arrived with Su Hong, carrying several name-stabilizing talismans. Su family assisting name stabilization. The 3 sides once again joined Obsidian Village's defense line. But this time, it was not for military granary profits. It was not for fragments of the Outer Wall Guardian General token. It was to prevent the Black Tide from completing reality anchoring in the Blackstone Wasteland. Lin Yao integrated them quickly. Shen family, right defense. Dragon Court, left defense. Su family, hand the name-stabilizing talismans to Bai Ji. No one leaves the range of the Obsidian Banner command light. Anyone who disobeys will be removed from the roster. No one objected. More and more Black Tide shadows appeared. They gathered at the perimeter and formed a towering black figure. The black figure had no face. But many names appeared across its body. No. They were not names. They were labels left after people had been swallowed by the Black Tide. Deserter. Untouchable. Trash. Rat. Monster. Cargo. Nameless. Countless malicious labels stacked together into its body. Black Tide Night Aggregate. Status, attempting reality anchoring. Core, aggregate of nameless labels. Target, destroy the Purification Register and seize a reality anchor point. It walked toward the contamination isolation shed. Every step made the register tremble. On the pages of the register, some names began to fade. Low-risk people shouted in terror. I can't see my name clearly. It's erasing names. Lin Yao's heart sank. Simply reading names was no longer enough. He had to use something stronger to hold them down. He looked toward the public ledger granary. Where there was grain, there were accounts. Then he looked toward the starving dead steel. The dead had names. Finally, he looked at the Obsidian Banner. Names were carried beneath the banner. These 3 were the routes by which Obsidian Village resisted the Black Tide. Lin Yao took out 3 things. The first was a copied ledger from the public grain account. The second was starving dead steel ash. The third was a temporary Obsidian Banner command light seal. He placed all of them before the Purification Register. The register is not an empty book. The grain account records what the living require. The starving dead steel records what the dead have lost. The Obsidian Banner records what the Guardians are responsible for. The Black Tide is nameless. It may not take names. The Black Tide Night Aggregate released a piercing scream. The malicious labels across its body began surging. You are only players. You are only data. You are only monsters. You are only tools. That line struck many players. After the boundary between game and reality blurred, they had also begun to fear whether they were merely tools being used by the system. Lin Yao raised his head, and his voice overpowered the Black Tide. Players have names too. Territory citizens have names too. Soldiers have names too. The dead have names too. Within the roster of Obsidian Village, no nameless tide is accepted. The Obsidian Banner erupted with dark red light. From the public ledger granary came the heavy sound of its doors. On the starving dead steel, blurred names lit up one by one. It was not only the living. Even the starving dead inside the military granary had, at this moment, become part of the register. They were not fighting. They were proving one thing. A name that was remembered would not be easily swallowed by the black tide. Guan suddenly said in a low voice, "Enter the death account into the register." Uncle Joe abruptly understood. He opened another roll of accounts. The death account of the starving dead. Nameless laborer. 12th hurried conscript. Nameless child. Han Gong. North Section Bao Squad. Gao Mu followed as well. Outer Wall Commandant. Zhao Tai. Li Feng. Wang Shan. Lu Shi. The names of the living and the dead intertwined above Obsidian Village. The malicious labels on the Black Tide Night aggregate began to collapse. Deserter shattered. Trash shattered. Monster shattered. Rat shattered. In their place appeared one acknowledged name after another. Asian knelt on the ground and cried out through tears. "I am Asian." At that instant, a crack opened in the chest of the Black Tide Night aggregate. Lin Yao seized the opportunity and closed the Purification Register. Black Tide Night contamination source. The nameless shall not stand. Reality shall not anchor. Disperse. The Obsidian Banner, the public ledger granary, the starving dead steel, and the Purification Register lit up at the same time. The Black Tide Night aggregate gave one final scream. Its body collapsed into countless strands of black mist. Some of it tried to burrow into the ground. But starving dead steel ash formed a gray-white circle of light and trapped it. Another portion tried to rush toward the players. But the register lit up and protected everyone whose name had been entered. The last portion tried to vanish into the void in complete reality anchoring. The weak reality projection register in Lin Yao's palm suddenly heated. He felt that in his real-world room, the register inside the metal box was opening in sync. The registers of the two worlds briefly overlapped. The black tide could not find an exit. In the end, all the black mist was pressed back into the sealing pit before the isolation shed, or it turned into a fist-sized piece of deactivated black crystal. A system prompt sounded. Regional event, Black Tide Night has been completed. Obsidian Village successfully prevented the main reality anchoring of Black Tide Night. Low-level black tide contamination in the Blackstone Wasteland has greatly decreased. Purification Register strengthened. Obsidian Village principle to have a name has received regional recognition. World synchronization rate stabilized at 0.1%. Obsidian Village has obtained the title, Name Guardians of Black Tide Night. The black tide receded. Night once again became ordinary night. Inside the trading area, there was first dead silence. Then the players burst into irrepressible cheers. Some cried. Some collapsed onto the ground. Some repeated their own names over and over. Shen Xianzhou looked at Lin Yao, his expression complicated. Shu He let out a long breath. Su Qingli said softly, "The first crack was guarded by you." Lin Yao did not answer. He looked at the Purification Register in his hand. The register was very hot. But it had not burned. It had endured Black Tide Night. Obsidian Village had endured it as well. The final crisis of the first season ended on this night. But Lin Yao knew that this was only the beginning. Black Tide Night was only low-level black tide contamination. Behind the second wall, the true source current of the black tide still existed. And the reality synchronization rate had stabilized at 0.1%. The world could never return to what it had once been. After Black Tide Night ended, Obsidian Village welcomed its first truly quiet morning. The sky above the Blackstone Wasteland remained gray. In the distance, the outer wall of the lost military fortress still appeared and disappeared within the black mist. The broken flags of Broken Flag Slope were still torn. The entrance to the military granary remained silent. But Obsidian Village was different. The Obsidian Banner unfolded in the morning wind. The two words on the banner, "to have a name," were clearer than before. In front of the public ledger granary, Uncle Joe posted the new Black Tide Night consumption account. This time, the account did not record only grain and medicinal materials. It also recorded roster usage, contamination treatments, voluntary reports, forced isolations, deaths. The number of deaths was 0. That made many villagers and players stand before the public board for a long time without speaking. In a crisis like Black Tide Night, Obsidian Village had not lost a single person. It was not because the enemy was weak. It was because everyone had stayed in their position. Zhao Tai guarded the front line. Uncle Joe guarded the accounts. Guan guarded the contamination shed. Bai Ji guarded the medicine and the people. Asian guarded those who were about to forget themselves. Gao Mu guarded military orders. Lin Yao guarded the register. This was not one person's victory. It was the first time Obsidian Village's order had truly withstood the test of a major event. In the morning, the system officially settled the event. Black Tide Night event settlement complete. Leading force, Obsidian Village. Assisting forces, Dragon Court, Shen family, Su family, peripheral collaborators. Event rating, excellent. Obsidian Village obtained, deactivated Black Tide Crystal. Obsidian Village obtained, Purification Register strengthening. Obsidian Village obtained, Contamination Isolation Shed upgrade qualification. Obsidian Village obtained regional title, name Guardians of Black Tide Night. Obsidian Village public sentiment, 76 to 84. Public security, 52 to 61. Military morale, stable to cohesive. Blackstone Wasteland regional reputation greatly increased. World synchronization stable node, 0.1%. Obsidian Village order type weak projection stability increased. Lin Yao looked at the settlement and did not feel much excitement. What he felt more was weight. Public sentiment, 84. Military morale, cohesive. Name Guardians of Black Tide Night. These were all enormous improvements. But the price was that Obsidian Village had completely stepped into the open. From today onward, every player in the Blackstone Wasteland would know. Obsidian Village could handle Black Tide contamination. Obsidian Village had a register that restrained the Black Tide. Obsidian Village had guarded against reality anchoring at the first synchronization node. This kind of reputation would bring people. It would bring resources. It would also bring covetous eyes. Lin Yao convened the first public meeting after Black Tide Night. This time, it was not only Obsidian Village's core members. Xin Xianzhou, Chui, Su Qingli, Bai Ji, Aizhan, and even several representatives from peripheral players were present. Lin Yao stood beneath the Obsidian Banner. Black Tide Night has passed. But the Black Tide has not disappeared. From today onward, Obsidian Village establishes 3 rules. Everyone fell silent. Lin Yao raised his hand. First, Black Tide contaminated objects may not be traded freely. Anyone who privately trades Black Tide contaminated objects within Obsidian Village's controlled area will be permanently placed on the hostile list. Second, Black Tide contaminated individuals may seek help, but they must register their names, undergo isolation, and accept the rule that they may not log off. Third, everyone involved in handling the black tide, regardless of whether they are players, territory citizens, or outside forces, will be protected by the register once they enter it, and will also be bound by the register. Shen Xianzhou asked, "What if other forces refuse to acknowledge this?" Lin Yao looked at him. "Then they should not come to Obsidian Village's controlled area." Shen Xianzhou smiled faintly. That answer was hard. But now Obsidian Village had the qualifications to be hard. Shu He nodded. Dragon Court acknowledges it. Su Qingli also said, the Su family acknowledges it. Shen Xianzhou was silent for a moment. My branch of the Shen family acknowledges it. Lin Yao did not force him to represent the entire Shen family. This was already enough. Bai Ji spoke on behalf of the peripheral collaborators. On the unaffiliated player's side, I'll help spread the rules. Ajan said quietly, those who recover from contamination can also help calm people. Lin Yao looked at him. From today onward, you will temporarily serve as contamination comforter. Ajan duty established, contamination comforter. Obsidian Village Black Tide Handling System has added a new duty, contamination comforter. Ajan's eyes reddened. He had almost become a black tide monster. Now, Obsidian Village had given him a new position. This was the true power of to have a name. It did not only record the past. It also gave people a place to stand again. After the meeting ended, Shen Xianzhou found Lin Yao alone. He Jin is missing. Lin Yao was not surprised. Related to the black tide materials? Shen Xianzhou nodded. He may also have contacted another branch of the observation project in reality. That batch of materials in Blackstone Camp was being collected by his people. Lin Yao asked, how do you plan to handle it? Shen Xianzhou said, inside the Shen family, I will clean it up. But if he has already been contaminated by the black tide, he may return to the Blackstone Wasteland. Lin Yao understood what he meant. He Jin might become a later antagonist thread. A person who controlled financial group resources, had contact with a real-world observation force, and was connected to black tide materials. If he was contaminated by the black tide but retained his reason, he would be very troublesome. Lin Yao only said, if he brings the black tide into Obsidian Village's controlled area, I will handle him according to the rules. Shen Xianzhou nodded. I know. Shui also came to say farewell. After Black Tide Night, Dragon Court's relationship with Obsidian Village had clearly become more stable. Dragon Court's upper ranks will reassess Obsidian Village. Lin Yao asked, is that good or bad? Shu He smiled. Both. But at least in the short term, Dragon Court will not be Obsidian Village's enemy. Lin Yao nodded. That is enough. Su Qingli came last. She handed Lin Yao a new excerpt from an ancient text. This is the next clue the Su family could find. Lin Yao took it. There was only one line on it. To seal the soldier's tomb, first establish the 4 pillars: banner, grain, name, and sacrifice. The banner was already held by the Obsidian Banner. The grain was already held by the public ledger granary. The name had already formed through the Purification Register. Only sacrifice remained. The War Soul Altar. This was the core prerequisite for the second season. Su Qingli said, in the next stage, you must repair the War Soul Altar. Otherwise, no matter how many Guardian General tokens you have, you will not be able to enter the outer sealed zone of the soldier's tomb. Lin Yao nodded. I know. Su Qingli looked at him. Also, the reality observation project will not stop. After the first synchronization node, your real-world value will be even higher. Be careful. After saying that, she left. Lin Yao stood beneath the Obsidian Banner and raised his head toward the sky. the system announcement finally sounded. Huaxiao Region announcement, Black Tide Night has ended. The main reality anchoring in the Blackstone Wasteland has been prevented. Leading force, Obsidian Village. Obsidian Village has obtained the regional title, named Guardians of Black Tide Night. Blackstone Wasteland main storyline has entered a new stage, War Soul Altar. The world channel boiled over once again. But Lin Yao did not look at it. He chose to log off. In reality, the equipment pod opened. Morning sunlight spilled through the curtains into the room. The metal box on the desk trembled slightly. Lin Yao opened the box. The weak projection of the Purification Register was still there. But this time, it was much more stable than before. The two words on the cover, Register, were already clear. Beside it, the bag of deactivated black bone ash had completely turned gray-white. There was no shadow. No grinding sound. In reality, the order of Obsidian Village had truly left behind a faint trace. There were 3 messages on his phone. Chan Hao. I'm fine. Last night, the light appeared on my hand again, but it disappeared quickly. Bai Ji. The herbal scent on my hands stayed this time. It didn't disappear as quickly. Reality Observation Project. You prevented one instance of black tide reality anchoring. We need to reassess the cooperation level. Warning: more than one party has attempted to locate your real-world coordinates. Before Lin Yao could reply, an unfamiliar text message suddenly appeared on his phone. There was no number. Only one line of text. Lord Lin Yao of Obsidian Village. The first banner has been raised. The first crack has been guarded. Reality observation officially begins. The message disappeared. As if it had never existed. In the next second, the Purification Register on Lin Yao's desk opened by itself to the first page. On the blank paper, a name appeared that did not belong to the game. Lin Yao. Lin Yao stared at his own name. The Obsidian Banner mark in his palm warmed slightly. Outside the window, the city was still running normally. Traffic, crowds, breakfast shops, office workers. Everything looked the same as always. But Lin Yao knew. Reality had begun to log in.